All right, thanks everybody. I want to welcome on Bob Whitcomb, GoLocal columnist and all around.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, great to have
we
you.
set off the air, war criminal, insider trader,
You wish
lobsterman.
You wish you could have
an
those.
oyster opener.
Arlene Violet was just
she's
on.
great.
She's
It's
just tremendous, and you can see the
fun.
passion on pro bono, representing a lot of them women. The crowd was dominated by women the other day. She's putting in
St. Joseph's.
Yeah.
I've got to say something quickly. My wife, who used to be the art teacher at St. Matthew's, which is a parochial school that was closed, large part because the studio, the nightclub fire. What do they call it? You know, the
Station fire.
Station fire. The effect on the fire rules and the priest abuse stuff. Had to pay for all this stuff. So they closed a lot of the parochial schools. You remember that?
Yeah,
it's really sad because a lot of these schools are doing great stuff in inner cities. So my wife is the art teacher at St. Matthew's, and I think a well-liked one. But she just got a letter to all the retired teachers saying, "Don't worry, be happy," from the diocese. Just thought I'd mention that. Now, I don't know how confidence building that is, but the letter seemed to imply that everything would be okay for everybody else. The trouble is, at least in the public's mind, the St. Joseph's issue is sort of extended to the other parts of it.
Well, I think they should. I'll be perfectly honest. We've been looking at this issue of the other church. They're all church plans.
Is there a kind of a broader effect,
right?
Like
and there's
RISDIC kind of, or something like that.
And there's no regulatory review. There's no third-party analysis, and there's no public.
Why isn't this stuff should be under ERISA? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, the federal agency.
The federal, at least you'd have much more transparency. You'd have much better record keeping. I don't think this problem would have gotten that bad with ERISA.
Well, so in the diocese newspaper about a week ago, I think it was last Thursday's edition that came out. The bishop said that they had no responsibility for the failure of the fund.
No moral responsibility?
Well, he said it. He was praying.
It's worthwhile. It's a moral obligation bond.
We won't get into that
Invented
yet.
by Nelson Rockefeller.
We won't go to moral obligations yet. But he said that he was praying for those that are now pending to get a 40% cut. And as you know, Attorney General Violet pointed out, a former nun. Sister of Mercy, that the folks that are being impacted are, borderline in poverty as it is, despite having worked 40, 50, 60 years.
Right. I mean, there's some thing on a little Social Security, I assume, some Social Security. Very few of them are people of means.
Right. Despite, if they were in the free market today, they would make $40, $50 an hour.
Yeah, if they went to work for a for-profit or a non-profit hospital, for Lifespan or for one of the for-profits, which are desperate for nurses.
Right.
Especially certain kinds of nurses. Desperate. One of my relatives has been in the hospital lately, and I'm noticing a lot of the nurses are actually quite elderly.
Yeah.
It's amazing how they can do it. It must be, tough on their feet. I'm talking about people who are 70, maybe.
Well, there's a number of professions that you wonder what's going to happen in the next generation.
Absolutely.
Nursing. Obviously we just built the nursing school. That was,
which is good.
Yeah, which is great. State of the art. Started in
after overcoming severe turf battles.
Yeah. Right. And credit needs to go to former Governor Chafee, who finally put and some to Governor Raimondo.
And good for the economy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think both Chafee and Raimondo have been very good at that. It'll be good for the healthcare sector and for the economy in general. And maybe this area can become well known for nursing education. Maybe it can develop something of a national reputation. If they can collaborate adequately with Lifespan, with maybe some of the Boston chains, for-profit and non-profit, that would be good.
So let's jump over to the Paw Sox. It was interesting. We taped in the arena the other day, and Ray Rickman and I were on, along with Mike Stenhouse and Guy Dufault, who's now become the spokesperson.
Great character. Guy Dufault, he's out of a novel. He should have been running. He should have been in charge of the casino with a riverboat. About 1840 or something.
And he is the spokesperson now for the ownership group in their proposing, and it was about as lively a show as you can get in
Any
a province.
violence?
There was no violence. It was
Oh,
it was
too bad.
respectful, but it was lively.
Yeah.
And you certainly get a sense of incredible urgency by the owners to push this thing
Right,
through.
right, which makes me very suspicious.
Well, a couple
Yeah,
things
yeah.
that are flawed. One is that, oh my God, we've got to do it before they move away, right?
Right.
And there does not seem to be any fact pattern to demonstrate
Yeah.
that there is anyone who has made any
Anywhere
viable.
on the planet, maybe on Mars, or there's a couple of asteroids.
You know, we're about local, so we
Right.
don't go as far as Mars here at GoLocal. In all fairness, you could see a city like Montreal, which is trying to
Yeah.
restore baseball,
Yeah.
make a bid for them. You know, God bless them, it's never been a very successful venue for baseball.
Of course not, it's in Canada.
The second element is that they summarily reject the idea of voter approval.
Right,
And,
right.
this is in that constitutional realm that
Yeah,
this
it's in a sort of a
requires.
fuzzy area. The biggest question to me is, the question I raise, it's very simple. Massachusetts, a very rich state, one of the 2 or 3 richest states, refuses to pay for stadiums, but
Right.
we apparently are eager to do so.
Well, and-
So what are we missing here? Maybe, are they wrong? Massachusetts, are they wrong? Are they stupid? Is Charlie Baker an idiot?
Well, the
I don't
owners
know.
aren't idiots, right?
Yeah.
They've
No,
all
they're
been
smart.
wildly
They're
successful
smart. I've met
businessmen.
the owners, and they're very smart. They're perfectly likable.
And only
charming.
one of them lives in Rhode Island full-time.
Who's that?
Habib Georgi,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
over at
Yeah.
Nautic Partners.
Dan Ray doesn't live here.
I don't believe so.
Oh,
Well, he's
yeah.
not a partner. He's
Yeah.
the general
He's
manager,
general
and he
manager.
lives in
Yeah,
Massachusetts.
and the
The-
son of a famous radio guy.
Yeah,
Also,
that's right,
by the way.
right.
Yeah.
And the ones who did, make their mark, Tom Ryan and
Right.
Terry Murray, have moved to Florida
Yeah,
and
yeah,
hold that
6
as
months
their.
in a day. so-
Yeah,
Right.
right.
They wouldn't pay the taxes on this.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
Especially if it crashes.
especially
The
if it
extra
crashes.
taxes, the
Yeah.
tax rate, the 1.5 or 2% raise in the sales tax to pay for it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it just seems like, now, if you asked me a week ago, I thought this thing was looking pretty greased to go.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see if this thing pauses a little bit. And in part, I think there's some legislators realizing, listen, I want to keep the Paw Sox. I think everybody does.
Oh, it's very charming. I mean,
Right.
you've been there plenty of times, haven't you? We
For-
love to
40,
take
50
people there.
times.
Yeah. I've been there maybe 20.
Never had a bad time.
Yeah, always had a good time.
Have no idea who they
You
play.
take people from another town, they were taking foreigners there,
Yeah.
since, as you know, I'm an illegal alien myself, so
Right.
I take fellow aliens there, and
Uh,
they love it. They
No
love
idea
it.
who they
Yeah.
played. No idea if they
Yeah.
won.
No, I was just
Um,
oblivious, eating hot dogs and drinking
Love
beer.
the ice cream. They
Yeah.
might have the
Yeah.
best ice cream.
And the
that-
light on that berm, in
It's
the late
great.
afternoon.
It's a
Very
great
evocative,
experience.
Very evocative.
Now, the other thing I'll say about it, in the 40 or 50 times I've gone, I don't ever remember going out to dinner before or
No.
after, or have a drink
No.
before or after.
No.
It is a self-contained, it's like
No.
going to a
I mean,
casino.
unless you're gonna sit there and maybe have a transfusion or something. How about intravenous feeding? That might be a great promotion. Yeah, you
new,
just sit there.
revenue
and,
stream
one
for
in
the-
each arm.
New revenue stream for
Right.
the boys over at Paw Sox. Maybe a marijuana
Yeah.
facility.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
a
Some
endless
opiates and you
opportunity.
get tents, right.
So I think it's going to be interesting
Yeah,
to
yeah.
watch that if they're going to, if you think about it, if you're not from Pawtucket, you're not a legislator from Pawtucket,
Yeah.
and even if you want to be a good team player and you want to spark the economy a little
Right.
bit, it's a tough vote.
Well, I don't see where the multiplier effect of this thing is from. I don't think people going there, even if they build this thing at the Apex thing, I don't see people hanging around, and even if they build a lot of new restaurants and stuff, I don't see a lot of people hanging around in Pawtucket and going to restaurants. Frankly.
Let's jump over.
Maybe I'm wrong, but,
We had a
yeah.
story today.
I wish them well, in a way.
Yeah.
In a way. Yeah.
We broke a story today. It is clear that Hasbro is doing two strategic things. One, they want to move towards a centralized campus, kind of that, an Amazon or a Nike where they can put everybody together.
Maybe
And they-
even moving from Pawtucket?
moving from Pawtucket.
Really? Yeah.
And they, they're not a toy company. They're not
Yeah, we
making-
should remind everybody.
Right.
All people think about is toy. It's an entertainment company.
That's right.
International entertainment company, and rapidly expanding.
Deep roots in gaming.
Getting in movies.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very significant position in movies, and and all the merchandising that takes place. The toy industry is a tough commodity
It's brutal.
industry, and the biggest retailer in America just filed for Chapter 11, Toys R Us.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, smart
You
by
can't
the-
live
the
on
man-
hammock or schlemmer.
Are they still in business?
I don't know. It's probably a
FAO
money laundering scheme based in Bogota now.
And
Yeah.
FAO Schwartz is definitely gone.
Yeah, yeah.
So they need to recruit young technologists and artists.
And here we are, this is a design center. There
Yeah.
is a comparative advantage around here in design. It's not just RISD, but plenty of other working artists and designers. So that would be a big argument to put it in Providence. Keep it in Rhode Island, certainly, and concentrate it in Providence.
They have right now.
It's like
according
the high-tech companies near MIT.
Right.
And Harvard on Mass Avenue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and exploding
Yeah,
in all
exploding,
directions.
yeah, exploding.
1,600 employees, as reported by the Department of Labor and Training in Rhode Island. So a significant employer. I think in the private sector, it's top 10 or 15.
Yeah, I would think
And
Generally well compensated.
well compensated and a growth.
Highly educated.
Highly educated
trained.
and growth.
Yeah.
Providence seems to be the perfect fit
Yeah,
for them. You know, it's whoever takes on Superman will be doing both public service as well as creating something of extraordinary
I think they put
proportions.
basically the campus would be one tall building, one tall Art Deco structure. Would be other buildings.
It would be
too?
other buildings as well, and maybe integration into design and, you know, all sorts of different things that could take place. So, you know, this is, I think, big news. I mean,
If they could do the retrofit, step building, tough.
Yeah.
Tough. Utilities.
but it's got to be
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
listen, we've been vacant in that building for going on 4 years, I think. And at some point, Rhode Island's got to find a tenant, subsidize a
They
tenant.
can't go on indefinitely. It would have to be torn down.
Right.
And that would be a kick in the pants, there's no doubt about it.
Right. At some point, the degradation of the
Yeah.
building from lack of
So
maintenance.
maybe there's an argument a design company, which Hasbro to a large extent, it sort of makes sense it would be in a quirky building
Yeah,
like that.
right.
You know, as opposed to a life insurance company.
And the branding possibilities are
Yeah,
endless, right?
yeah.
I mean, light that thing up,
Big
with logos,
sign at
yeah,
the top,
tremendous.
right, you'd put a restaurant on top with some of the Hasbro characters. And,
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
And you could have like even a
Retail.
studio or movie place on
Yeah,
the first floor.
right.
With Hasbro connected entertainment.
So it is a remarkable
Yeah,
opportunity.
Do you think it's serious? How
I-
serious is it, or is it really just sort of blue sky?
I think it's very serious that they're going to centralize and create a campus. I think it's very important that they stay in Rhode Island.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know,
In part because it's a testimony that there is a comparative advantage here in this design. So
Correct.
That's why it's so
yeah.
important.
And I think, listen, people who move their companies find out it's not always as easy as you think.
Yeah.
You have a lot of people who don't go with you, and they're more than you anticipate. There was a famous case here. I worked at Leonard Monahan back in the
Sure.
day, and there was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
rival firm, Pagano, Shank and Kay.
Yeah, yeah.
And Pagano, Shank and Kay wanted to get bigger, so they moved to Boston.
Yeah.
Well, a couple
They
things happened.
drowned.
Well, part one was about half their staff didn't want to go.
Yeah.
Or they tried it and commuted. The second was those who went, it was fine to make $70,000 as a copywriter, but then they found out across the street over at Hill Holiday, you make $100,000 for the same position. They were gone out the door.
Yeah, and there's no loyalty in the ad business. We all know that. You can walk up a couple of blocks of Madison Avenue, New York, and no loyalty. The account executives, the art directors, forget
It's
it.
key to the whole thing.
Yeah,
You jump
fluidity,
around. Yeah.
fluidity, right.
So
Absolutely. And
that-
then, of course, it's expensive to live in Boston and all this. I remember when Providence was actually a major advertising
Absolutely.
center. The first time we lived here in the late 70s, there were 3 or 4 national firms.
Yep, yep.
Kramer's, of course,
Kramer,
is huge.
Len-
Trowbridge.
Yeah,
was-
that's right.
Yeah.
And then Leonard Monahan and
Yeah.
Pagano, Shank and Kay
Yeah.
really became
Yeah, and they're doing stuff,
creative
national
agency.
ads, even international
Yeah.
ads. And they, at that time, they used a lot of the RISD connection.
Yeah.
The design people.
Um,
Yeah, maybe we could maybe if Hasbro did that, we could bring some of the ad agencies back.
Potentially, right.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We've talked about Benny's. I was there on Monday.
Did you buy anything?
I bought as much as I possibly could.
It's all on sale?
40% off.
Oh, boy.
They're restocking now, actually. They've been
too bad.
picked clean, and they're in the process of really emptying
I'm
out the
always
warehouse.
embarrassed to go to the one that I go to in
Yeah.
Providence because I know everybody,
Yeah.
all the cashiers. I don't.
Well, I got to tell you, the cashiers there have been there for 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it was a little, I got to say, it was a little emotional. You could tell that,
Yeah.
I was thanking the woman who's been there. I recognized her, and she was kind of tearing up a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's where she's been.
I used to buy my kids toys there in
Yeah.
bicycles,
Right.
cheap bikes.
Right.
And
Great
they would
bikes.
fix them.
Fix them,
Right.
put them together,
Right.
and are we just in a point of economy of Amazons and et cetera that are we now becoming sports
Specialty
free
store.
agency?
I
Yeah.
think the specialty store. Here's a great example. I mentioned it to your Brendan colleague, Kate. I drove down Doyle Avenue in a sort of slightly gritty part of the east side of Providence and noticed a little kind of grubby little grocery store there is now a gourmet bagel
Right.
establishment.
Right.
Artesian
Yeah, right.
bagels, which is
Right.
sort of an oxymoron.
Right.
And I think you're going to find a lot of that. Actually, I have quite a bit of faith in the ability of sort of old-fashioned main streets to do specialty stores, locally produced stuff especially. I think it's the big places that are hurt. The stuff, I can buy, all this stuff at Macy's, for example, I can't find anything that fit, I'm too thin or something. So I just do that online. I pretty much gave up. I can't find anything there. But there could be something, maybe it's made here, could even be something as quirky as locally designed neckties.
Yeah,
They make
right.
quirky neckties. And I'll go over there and pay a little extra for
Right.
that. And I think you're going to see that. Best example where this is going is Manchester, Vermont, which I mentioned in my last column. But
Right, absolutely.
all the brand names, the outlets for all the fancy stores, the Brooks Brothers stuff, they're all in deep trouble.
Yeah.
People, you can buy all the Brooks Brothers Oxford blue shirts made in Burmese concentration camps you want online. But there is sort of local, sort of maple sugar chocolate something or other, made in Vermont that you can get there, and even some local clothes, fishing stuff, and so I think there's a future for that. Kind of it's a little bit of Back to the Future, but the heyday of these outlets, big box stores. What do you think? I think it's going down.
I
it's going down.
think they're going to have a rough Christmas, and
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
if we
I
have
agree.
a 6-month recession, I'm not talking
Yeah.
a 2-year recession.
Yeah.
The amount of
In a
debt,
standard cyclical recession, which we're due.
these
Probably next
Macy's
year.
types where they just are
Yeah.
devastated
Yeah.
with that,
Yeah.
and they're trying to pivot to digital,
Yeah.
but they're just so far behind. I
Yeah.
mean, say what you want about Amazon, it is the most brilliant shopping
Absolutely, and
experience.
you can find anything,
Literally
pretty
anything.
much anything, at any price.
Yeah.
High-end stuff, cheap stuff, sort of the routine stuff, khaki pants and so on. You do it at Amazon. I'd rather give it to somebody around here, but they don't have the choice
Yeah,
anymore.
absolutely.
And it's a vicious circle, as they do worse and worse. Macy's, Target, or Target, of course,
Right.
as we call it.
Less inventory,
less
less
inventory,
staff.
less likely that someone like me or any other customer would go over there. You're not gonna
I will
find
say
it.
this, just to double back to Benny's. If you went to a Benny's, the staff was tremendous.
Oh, they were great. Yeah,
And,
they'd
and
find
if you're
you anything.
and if you're
Yeah.
hiring right
Yeah.
now, you might want to go out and
Hire-
recruit for Benny's
Yeah, they're
folks.
great customer service.
Tremendous,
people. Yeah.
and that's a lost art in
Yeah.
so many retailers.
They even
as
remember
well.
what you're interested
Right.
in.
It's
I
just-
was always like losing screwdrivers. Oh yeah. So it's great stuff. I think a big question: what will happen to those stores? I don't know. So there's some great locations. The stores are architecturally are not plausible, but some of the locations are absolutely terrific.
Yeah, they are.
What will happen to them? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of rumors going on.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
somebody going to sweep in and grab them
Strip
all?
joints, sort of satellite casinos. What do you think?
Yeah.
Opiate dispensaries.
Twin Rivers got their eye on all of them.
Right, absolutely.
Let's just last segment.
Sure.
Let's head down to Washington D.C.
Yeah.
It is.
But not with Dr. Price for $80,000. Right.
I got to tell you,
he's
you know,
a total crook.
I worked for John Chafee.
I know. Oh, cheap, Yankee cheapness.
The thought. So one time I was on a trip, and
Business trip.
a business trip with the
Senatorial
U.S.
trip,
Navy,
yeah.
and I flew down to Rosie Roads in Puerto Rico,
right,
and out to the USS
yeah.
Farragut,
That's
which is a
right,
famous,
yeah, sure,
where
yeah.
John McCain was. There was a
Na-
famous
named
fire.
after the famous defense first killed
Defense
himself
secretary.
by jumping out of the window at St. Elizabeth's.
Yeah. And on the way back, I was out there for a
Yeah.
weekend, so got landed on the
Yeah.
carrier, got catapulted off.
Pretty exciting,
Went to
yeah.
Florida. I took 7 different military flights back on a Sunday. Right?
To
the
save
precision-
money.
Yeah,
Right,
he was
right.
going to let me
Yeah.
fly commercial.
Yeah.
Nobody else was going to
Yeah.
let me fly commercial.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I took
Those are the good
7
old days.
flights. It took like 16 hours. And I cannot, the thought of John Chafee, of even like sitting in first class is so.
Yeah, I saw him a few times.
Yeah,
in the baggage
Yeah,
compartment.
absolutely.
He's very tall. No, this guy Price, this is just the corruption of society. I think he spent, what, $50,000 to fly from Washington to Philly?
Yes, right.
Which you could do in a couple of hours on Amtrak. I mean, the arrogance of this guy. I think he will be fired. He's also an insider trader. I mean, nobody's perfect.
Right.
Far for me to judge, but I don't think he'll be in office by the end of the year.
No, I don't think so.
And who's that other crook, the trader, Mnuchin, who
Yeah.
asked the government to fly him to his honeymoon.
Right.
He and his glitzy wife to his honeymoon
Right.
à Paris.
Well, and he's former
Yeah.
Goldman Sachs guy. He's
well,
only worth
yeah.
$100 or $200 million.
Yeah, I mean,
but-
he's got to save his money. It's very touch, for a rainy day.
Some polling data
Yeah.
came out
Yeah.
on Tuesday, and it said, it was very interesting polling data.
Yeah.
58% of the people agreed with Trump on the NFL flag.
Yeah, that
And
would
when you
surprise
took
me.
Trump out of it,
Yeah.
it was almost to 75%.
Yeah, right. That's very interesting.
Right.
I tip my hat to the pollster. Interesting question.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he's repellent, but no, my view of this whole thing is idiotic. I mean, they're expressing the First Amendment. The First Amendment. A lot of the so-called deplorables only remember the Second Amendment.
Right.
But my view of this is, okay, they've got the right to stand their head, they have the right to kneel, and the owners have the right to fire them. I don't feel sorry for any of these people. Most of the owners are going to get there show solidarity because the owners are in it for the money.
Right.
It's an extremely lucrative business. The other thing, for some reason, got me thinking about the NFL. In 10 years, we may not have the NFL. Around the time that Tom Brady starts to show signs of dementia from his multiple concussions.
We will have flag football.
Yeah,
That will
I
be the
agree.
game.
I agree. As more and more of these concussion cases come out, and I hate to say it, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that with Mr. Brady.
Yeah.
In 10 years, his wife's talked
Yeah.
about his concussions, and as pretty as he is, and
Yeah.
bright as he is, that could be very sad. And I think the thing is going to go down. I think the NFL owners are trying to make as much money as they can. I don't think Trump is patriotic. I don't think the owners are patriotic. None of this has anything to do with patriotism. It's just,
We talk about the
Showing
First
up.
Amendment. Listen, the First Amendment gives wide sweeping rights. It doesn't mean you have to use all of them.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, and you can't yell fire in a crowd. Who's that?
Yeah.
Oliver Wendell
Yeah,
Holmes?
right.
Yeah, right.
No,
Be fun to try
Jeff
it. Though.
Potter.
I've got to try
I think it
it.
was Potter.
No. He's the guy who said about pornography. I don't know. I can't describe it. I know it when I see it. Great man. Great man.
I'll just jump over on the First Amendment. PBS has been running this series
Vietnam,
on Vietnam. Last night they focused in part on the Pentagon Papers.
Yeah.
And
I actually wrote about the Pentagon Papers at the time. And a dear friend of mine, Sam Aft, edited them. He was sort of the line editor.
Yeah.
I remember writing about
you were at the
it.
Wall Street Journal?
No, at that time I was still at the Herald Tribune. Well, actually, Herald Tribune, then the Wall Street Journal.
Okay.
Yeah, very interesting time. I've been thinking about Vietnam a lot because I'm right in the middle of that generation, and I mentioned this in my little ruminations. I remember in 1965, my father and I were watching the CBS Evening News, and the war is beginning to perk up. My father was a very quiet guy. He looks at me like that. He said, I don't think you'd look very good in a uniform. And a lot of people a lot of conservatives like him did not like this. They thought this was going into a swamp. By the way, he was a combat veteran, retired from the Navy as a lieutenant commander. He's at Anzio. He had
Yeah.
some familiarity with violence.
war.
And a lot of people forget that. There was actually a lot of reservation about this, not just amongst the liberals. Actually, the liberals got us into it.
Yeah.
Right?
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
Kennedy and Johnson and.
But what do you think about that, the series? I think it's very well shot, I mean, well written. I think it's got a lot of problems. I mean, they don't go, what happened before the French? You've got to talk about the Chinese. The Vietnamese hate the Chinese. That was an important thing to, that would have explained a lot of stuff.
Listen, I haven't
Deeper
watched
history.
every single hour of it, but it does lose the context, I think, a little
Yeah.
bit of the Cold War. That,
Yes,
that the
that's
stress and strain of the fear of communism.
You're absolutely, there was a
And-
terror, and, you know, they were being supplied by the Russians and the Chinese, even though by that time the Russians and Chinese hated each other,
Right.
as they will again, by the way. Yeah, you have, people forget the context, the fear.
Real fear.
Yeah, real
Nuclear
fear. You had an
fear.
aggressive, a brutal dictatorship running Russia, as
Yeah.
you do now, but it was even
Right.
worse then, and, yeah,
And China,
and China.
right?
yeah.
I mean, both had, death camps.
It was the
and-
time of the Cultural Revolution
Right.
in China, in the heart of the war, and I think there was this tremendous anxiety, and we forget that.
And
Yeah.
the belief was, and I think it was Kennedy's fear going into re-election,
Yeah.
was that if you gave the communists a country, you couldn't be politically viable. And he
Well,
was
yeah.
probably
Well,
right.
he's probably right. I mean, poor Truman got whomped for losing China.
Yeah,
As if it was
right.
ours to lose. This was the big thing. And the right wing of the Republican Party used that for years against
Right.
the Democrats, losing China.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of the Republicans very closely connected with Chiang Kai-shek.
Right.
You know, especially Harry Luce, who ran Time Life, who actually was born in China.
Right.
Child of a missionary. And so I think the point you raise is very good. This is often a problem when 30, 40, 50 years later, people forget the context. What were people's thinking
Right.
and feeling and emotions about the war at that time? What was behind it? And it was, you know, it was the heart of the Cold War.
Right. And I think that's
Yeah.
one
I mean,
component.
Soviet ships were bringing supplies to Haiphong Harbor, and we, you know, it was a good thing that we didn't kill too many Soviets.
Yeah, right.
These are coming in. There's a lot of fear of that was going to cause a war with the Russians.
Well, listen, we're not in a legislative session, we're not in an election cycle, and it literally couldn't be busier on the political
Yeah,
front.
yeah.
We're
Around
going
here.
in,
Oh,
yeah,
boy,
it is
yeah.
just going to be 2018.
Yeah.
You know, we had a piece of handicapping all the different candidates. You know, here's Gina Raimondo, you know, the best literally might have the best resume of any 46-year-old in the United States of America.
Very intelligent, but probably not well liked. I find her very likable in person. I like her. I don't think she has the kind of political charisma that you would expect, that you might hope for.
And they're lining up to run
Yeah.
against her.
Yeah, and I find some of them implausible, frankly.
Yeah.
Patricia Morgan, it's hard to see.
Well, let me do a little math for you.
Yeah.
The biggest, and don't hold me to the exact numbers, I'm doing it by memory, but I think the largest GOP primary was Ron Makeley in Lincoln Almond.
Yeah, and two very plausible candidates.
Absolutely,
Very
great
impressive.
resumes, one a
Yeah,
U.S.
yeah.
attorney, one a congressman.
Yeah.
And the
And
total,
some charm, a bit of,
Right.
especially Ron, some charisma, some charm.
in a
Yeah.
competitive Democratic primary between Mirth York, Sheldon Whitehouse, and Tony Pyra. So there
Yeah,
were two
yeah.
vibrant primaries.
Yeah.
The biggest turnout was that year, it's 1994, and I think 60,000 people voted in the Republican primary. So that's
That's a lot, yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
call it 40 to 50 this
Yeah.
cycle. You have
Yeah.
four potential Republicans: Alan Fung,
Right,
Patricia
Alan Fung.
Morgan, Joe
Right.
Trillo, potentially Giovanni Ferrosi.
You know, it's funny about Giovanni, even with all of its problems and stuff, he's the only one of those where he's got charisma. He's got this crazy charisma, energy. The other people don't have energy. He's clearly very smart. He's also overextended, and but he's clearly smart. He's by far the most interesting one. I mean, the other one's Mayor Fung. I think perfectly competent mayor, but not fascinating. I mean, Gina Raimondo's got a lot more pizzazz. than
So
he
if you have
has.
four and there's
Yeah.
40,000 votes, you need 14,
Yeah,
15,000.
I know, it's crazy.
Right?
Nobody votes. Well, there are very few Republicans anyway.
Right.
Nobody votes. Yes.
So it really
Yeah.
lines
So
itself.
Giovanni could win.
Just remember, Donald Trump is president of the United States.
Right.
So
We should always remember that.
that's right.
Yeah,
Handicap
yeah,
nothing
right.
without.
And whatever Giovanni's problems, we should remember that Trump. How many times has he filed bankruptcy?
The casinos, I
Because
believe,
the
3
New
times.
Jersey stuff.
Yeah,
right.
3 times.
And I think there were some real estate
Yeah.
bankruptcies too. But it's hard to see, Gina, on a one-on-one, very charming. But in the public, not particularly charismatic, but the other ones are even less so.
It's going to be an interesting year. There's going to be no shortage of issues. It's going to be, you can already tell here, it's rock'em sock'em robots already. We look forward to it.
Do you think economic development, these efforts by the Raimondo administration to bring in people, basically pay people to come in and set up shop, how big an issue would that be? Or will that, since we've had, a few new people here, a few new people there, Johnson & Johnson, we were talking about off the air, will this be enough to get her reelected? Or will people just say, hey, we're paying all these big rich companies all this money to come in and create a comparably small number of jobs?
Well, it's interesting. We broke the Hasbro story. I was looking at the comments in social
They're
media.
local, though.
They're
I mean,
local
loyal.
comment.
They're pretty loyal.
Do you know what every comment was? Almost every comment. There were a few like, yay, that's great, they'll grow.
Oh,
Most
very
comments
exciting.
was, not one red cent of subsidies.
For
No,
Hasbro.
For Hasbro.
And they're a loyal company. Yeah.
Right.
Who've been
So-
here from the beginning.
Since the beginning.
With beloved products and
Right.
all that stuff. I'm surprised. I thought there'd be more goodwill for
Mr.
Hasbro.
Potato Head and
Yeah,
G.I.
all the
Joe.
G.I. Joe.
Joe
all those
served our
crazy
country.
movies.
Right.
I'm rather surprised. I mean, these like Virgin Pulse and all this stuff, who's ever heard of that? I know
Right.
it's big, but nobody around here knows what that is. All the public can see is they're coming in, we're giving them money, but I don't know how that is. Will this be a central issue, though? Do you think
I
this
do.
economic
Yeah.
development, will this be the central
I think
issue?
if Link Chafee has clearly outlined it, if he
Yeah,
decides to run
yeah,
in the
yeah,
Democratic primary,
yeah.
the Republicans have talked about it. Patricia Morgan is very good on this issue. She hammers away
Yeah.
and hammers away on
Sort of
it.
crony capitalism? and
Yeah,
so-
just,
yeah.
and is there listen, some of these companies are getting $50,000 of jobs in
Right.
subsidies and more. It's not hard to do economic development, grow jobs.
Well, it's like
if you're
that
getting
one they're doing out of
50,000.
Wisconsin, they finally deconstructed it, that's a disaster.
Right.
And the company is crooked too,
The Apple
Foxconn.
supplier, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's all just baloney.
Right.
What, are we gonna give these people $200,000 a job or
Right.
something like that?
I feel comfortable that we
to
could
tighten
grow,
the
we could
screws
grow
on-
GoLocal significant at $200,000
You can
in
do-
subsidies.
You can
and
handle
jobs.
that, yeah, caviar every day for lunch, right. But that'll be interesting, unless, of course, we go into recession and all bets are off. My guess is, having followed business cycles since the late '60s, we're probably due for recession probably next year sometime.
Yeah.
And how that's gonna affect things around here.
Stock market couldn't be pumping along any
Yeah,
better, but
yeah.
it just can't.
Still,
What goes
it's,
up must come down at least a
The
little.
price-earnings ratios and everything, it's just absolutely crazy. Tech is beginning to falter.
A little bit.
See that?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so invest in Johnson & Johnson, blue chip consumer companies, like Berkshire Hathaway.
Right.
So I think if there's a big recession, that of course changes everything.
Throws it
Other
all.
people may come in, maybe Bob Flanders will come in.
Yeah.
Has
So,
anybody talked about
He's
that?
looking at U.S.
Yeah,
Senate,
yeah,
I think,
yeah,
Hart.
yeah.
He's given every
I don't think
indication.
he can beat Sheldon.
I think it's a tough race,
Yeah.
but, Sheldon will run against Trump like he did against
right,
Chafee,
right,
running
yeah.
against Bush.
Yeah, don't add a vote to the caucus,
Right,
right? Remember
right,
that's what he
yep,
kept saying?
yep.
You vote for that fire hydrant.
Right.
As long as it's not in the caucus.
Right. So I think that's the X factor. Well, Bob, always thank you so
Okay,
much.
great,
Always
sure.
look to read, I think, the best column in Rhode Island, maybe in New England. Bob
No, in the
Whitcomb's,
universe.
maybe in the universe,
Yeah,
free
right,
world.
right.
We'll go with free world. We cannot speak
Free
to
world.
Yemen.
The shrinking free world.
Yes. Cuba, I don't know if
Yeah.
Cuba's in or out of
Yeah.
the free world. And North Korea, we're not sure how the columnists
I
are
like
over
them.
there.
I've kind of come around in North Korea. I'm a big proponent of, executive rigor. And there you got somebody who knows what he's doing. We need more people like that here.
Strong leadership.
Strong leadership, clear mission.